So it's the magical one-footed post that becomes an anchor.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We're here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 25 years and I have about 27. Today, we are taking a look at a demo of Jordan Top, and it was recent. I don't remember what it's at.
Look at the glowing thing behind them, the Korean Open.
Yes.
I'll drop the link to the original video in the cards above. So go ahead and give it a watch, and when you're done, we will get to analyzing. Oh, so gooey. You were the one that picked this video for this week. So what were the things that made you want to frame through it?
It's just a really good lead follow from the two of them. Like, we see like one or two of their kind of go-to tricks, but like really it's not one of the, like, they're pulling out all of the things that they consistently use. It feels very much like a organic dance between the two of them, and I really like that. And not to say that them, using their tricks and whatever that they usually do is bad, but like it's a different vibe, And this also, the demo, it feels like maybe a more intimate setting, like it's dark in the ballroom, so that feels more appropriate than like when all the lights are on, spotlighted situation, and like, that's when they want to pull out their rehearsed things that they can do in this type of demo situation. It feels very fun and casual. So I like it.
I could not agree more. I was so excited that you found it because I had not seen it yet when you sent it to me. And I was like, oh, this is,
I know, right?
Do the screen share. There is one side note, because I remember earlier in my West Coast Swing career, there was this, like, the body roll police, like they would find you, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't body roll.
Yeah.
Someone will find you and torture. I don't know what the consequences were supposed to be, but I was scared. I don't know why people were just so fussy about body rolls for like these few years back in the day. And I'm just like, this video has so many body rolls. And I'm here for each and every one of them. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So I love that they're just kind of easing into the dance. They're not trying to rush into an open position immediately. And I love that he realizes that there's a moment musically that she could do something, and she takes it, and he waits for her. He doesn't try and, move her out of it, doesn't try and do something over what she's doing.
You actually get to see a lot of their like stationary neck roll work, but at a slower speed. In this dance, because usually like one of their signature moves is like the whoop-ah, and it happens so fast you're surprised your head is still attached. But we get to see them at a pace where we can like, oh, that's how that's happening. That is so cool.
I also love that there's a lot of just like basic triple, slightly different type anchors that they're using in this. It's like, it's very simple, very nice. It also goes with the style of the music though. This particular music, it's very dialed back. There's not a ton that's happening. It's more of like an acoustic vibe. So to match it with your dancing, there shouldn't be a ton happening all the time. So like just going into a slightly stylized anchor is going to be a really nice match for this type of music. And like what she does right here is she really kind of emphasizes one movement and lets it kind of dissipate before moving on. That's something that also really ties in with the music.
Because there are so many just really lovely, more basic anchors with slight variations in this dance, I just want to highlight them. especially because they're sinking into them so
Yeah.
much. So if we pay attention to the handhold, it's not traveling very far. Like I've talked about this a lot. What's happening is they're both stretching away from the handhold, increasing the tension. And then as Jordan finishes getting his head weight like over this his heel or further past it, that's what actually moves the handhold and leads taut forward. So it like breaks the seal, as I
Mhm.
like to call it. But during the actual anchor, they're both sinking into that and both moving away from the handhold.
Yeah.
I'm just hyper aware of this because I've been working with multiple leaders recently who have a tendency to let their left shoulders travel the handhold forward towards the follow. So the follow doesn't actually have anything to stretch into, right? So if we watch Jordan's left shoulder relative to the handhold, his shoulder is actually traveling away from the handhold. He's extending his arm. So his shoulder is moving with his body as he's rolling through his right foot, as opposed to like disconnecting from that shoulder and leaving it behind.
Mhm.
Tot then is able to actually like put weight into the connection because Jordan is countering it.
Mhm. I also wanted to add, because their handhold there, they're going from one that's a little bit lower, and as they're kind of stretching away, it's coming up and it's also rotating slightly. And so because they're stretching away, that's creating more tension. It's not creating a lot of tension, but it's creating some. And the additional tension is coming from that rotation of the hands because there's less, when you're twisting the muscles, you can't extend as far with it. It kind of shortens things up. So it's creating that tension in that way as well.
So juicy. And then similar juicy anchor here, just slightly different shapes because Jordan is facing away down the slot. But you still
Mhm.
have that. They're both stretching away from the handhold. And the handhold, once Tot has gotten some of her weight over her left foot, the hand basically doesn't travel as much anymore and they stretch away from it.
Quick thing. Is it his handhold or his elbow that he's
Ooh, good question. I'd say to be very specific, it's his mid forearm, and his mid forearm is like
yeah,
rotating around a point.
I agree.
Um, but the end result is giving Tot something stable to connect to and anchor into. You don't have to lead a follow to anchor because, in theory, they all know that's what their job is. So you don't have to encourage a follow to continue moving through space back away from you unless you're with a much babier follow who just doesn't know how to put weight into the connection, in which case as a leader you can use it as a tool to encourage the follow to continue moving away from you
Right.
through their anchor. But that's a tool to use with follows who don't understand their job yet. But at its basic, a follow in theory is going to move away from you, so you need to instead be a counter to that as a leader.
Mhm.
And what I see a lot is leaders using that their like left shoulder as the center counterpoint. And like their arm is moving away from the shoulder and their body is opening away from the shoulder and the shoulder's not
Mhm.
going anywhere. But that makes the follow feel like they're falling off a cliff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a part of that is that when you are stretching away from that shoulder, when you're, using that as kind of that center, there's almost too much rope that you can get from moving your arm away from the body. And that's what creates the follow feeling like they're just falling off a cliff because
Yeah.
it's just too much rope from where they're at. They're going too far back past the heel of their foot when
Mm-hmm.
they're connected in that tension.
Yeah. An anchor only works because you've run out of rope.
I really like some of the little hand stylings and arm stylings that Tot does in this. They're very nice. That she's like creating kind of O shapes by putting the middle finger and the thumb kind of together. Not totally, not the whole time, but that's kind of the look of it. Because a lot of times in her styling, at least previously, she would do more of a like kind of loose fist almost when she would do kind of more hand style or arm stylings and such. But I really like that she's letting the hands flow with the rest of the arm. It really matches the style of the music.
Working with your fingers as a follow if you want to appear more feminine. So that's something you want to do, like working on what your fingers are doing, not just your arms, can have like a huge impact.
Yes.
It's an unfortunate.
I was looking at her face.
I'm so sorry, Tot. That was a terrible freeze frame.
And I was realizing what moment this was because this is the moment where
it's the dirty dancing line.
She's totally like, oh, he's about to bend me forward. Actually, we're not doing that. Cool. All right
then. Talking about running out of rope. This is actually a really good example of like they ran out of rope so much that Jordan has to do a tap with his left foot to bring Tot forward, because if he actually were to move his body down the slot further, it would accelerate her because of how much it's not that there's like a whole bunch of tension, it's just that there's so little rope that that much movement would create power.
I love this from her. He has her forearm, right? And so she needs to move away from him in order to get to a hand-hand connection. So she chooses to do that in a way that she like walks and then she kind of drops. And the drop is more so to get the tension. The walk is more so to get to the hand-to-hand positioning. And the drop, and you can kind of see she's kind of back diagonally, like downwards, away from him when she's kind of dropping. That's where her weight is going. And that's going to create quite a bit of tension and create that anchor feeling.
Another thing is the way she's stepping forward with her right foot right here. It's far enough away that she could completely have her whole weight for this rotation if she wanted to, but it gives her the space and the time to feel out how much Jordan will or chooses to counter her, which is what allows her basically her torso weight to be back behind her standing foot. It's because he is countering her.
And you can see when she's kind of walking away from him, she has kind of an intent forward with her upper body more so than her lower body. So she's kind of leaning into that connection. Well, she's leaning forward and that helps get to that connection faster. So then she can increase it. And I love this choice from her. It's like kind of pausing that momentum she's getting from him and then relaxing, right? So he's really kind of sending her with a good amount of energy. And she's taking that, and you can see she's sending it upwards. That's why she's going up onto her toes more. And then she's relaxing and dropping back down. And I love that. That's such a really nice stylized way to deal with getting extra momentum, is to send it upwards when you're when you know you're going to be at the end of your rope pretty quickly.
And she's not trying to force her left foot and left side back into like a standard anchor position. She's letting her left foot fall in front of her.
Yeah. And then she just kind of does a step, 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 just in place with the feet. So she's keeping the same rhythm. She's just not switching the feet in the same way. So one major reason that she can drop back into this is because they have a really strong connection point. He has around her whole arm, and she also is grabbing around the arm.
His shirt, I just noticed that. That was amazing. I think that's just for theatrical effect. It's not actually performing a function.
So when she's going into this, you can tell she's kind of getting herself balanced initially. So as soon as she gets on that right foot, that's when she's starting to prep for this. And she's doing a really good job of keeping things pretty even in terms of where her head weight and her foot weight is. So she's switching them pretty evenly, which is going to help her not be throwing her weight one way or the other too much. And she's also, before she's kind of dropping back into that, she's kind of coming up ever so slightly first. So there's not just a bunch of energy directly into it. Right. So you can kind of see she comes up onto her toe, does a little hop first. That's going to dissipate a little bit of that momentum because her swinging back around with the head is going to create a lot of it. So you don't want to have a ton of momentum going into it and then add more momentum to the momentum that you already have. So she's trying to like dissipate it a little bit first and then going into it. And so by coming up first, and then as she's dropping, you can see she has the leg to the back first as she's dropping the head forward. And so that's even. And then as she's coming around, she swings that back leg forward and rolls the head backwards. So then she's evenly keeping that weight on the same side and the same amount on each side. So even though the arch in her back is going to create more energy going backwards, that doesn't happen initially. It happens after she's kind of already in that position. So it's not creating just like a sudden drop of weight backwards that Jordan would feel. It's still easing into it and gradually increasing. And what you can see, she brings the leg underneath her as she's arching back and dropping the head back further. That's going to create a lot of weight going down into the floor for him, but it's not immediately. And I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's fine. Basically, like what he ends up feeling is she's communicating really clearly where her center is grounding into the floor. So that way he knows what to create a radius around to keep her on that center. And then she's also being really clear with the direction of the counter. So that way he can counter equal and opposite.
Yeah.
So like you were saying earlier, she's not just going every which way. Not only would that not look very good, but it would be very confusing to him. So one of your jobs, if you're doing the fancier things on the middle of a ride, being really clear about where your center is grounding into the floor and what direction your weight is intending, so that way your partner isn't questioning how to counter you correctly.
Right.
I loved this variation where she held onto his leg.
Yeah, no.
That was so funny.
And he hops like with the music.
Yep. So obviously this is one of those, this is one of their signature moves, right?
Yep.
But I don't think many people get to frame through it. So might as well take a gander while we're here. So the really important part is the actual lead to get her to shape and rotate like down and around to her right is already happening from the handhold.
Yep.
So she's already in that shape before his leg has even gotten anywhere near her upper arm.
Mhm.
And then as soon as his thigh is available, they switch from a right to right hand hold. They let go so she can grab onto his thigh with her right arm.
Right.
And then because she's already turning, he just clears her with his leg. So his
Mhm.
leg is not leading her rotation.
No, it's kind of just taking over
Illusion.
and finishing
Yeah.
from what his hands initiated.
All right. I'm going to talk about a little detail that's been on my mind recently.
Mm.
And it's how to catch a follow mid rotation and lead them to be on one foot or the other.
Mhm.
So, uh, Jordan leads Tot to accelerate through a turn. And it's more or less a turn in place. She's not really traveling very much. But notice right here, she's on her right foot, but she's very pitched towards him. But what needs to happen for her to feel centered on her feet is that when he gets into this closed position, her whole body needs to be over the standing foot. And what I find happens a lot is a leader will take the hand from here and assume this is as far away as their back is going to get. And it creates this like claustrophobic, like
Mhm.
not enough room. And then a follow actually ends up stumbling because they can't get, they're trying to get their upper body over their feet, but the leader is being like, no, magically move your feet underneath you like a marionette and get your feet underneath your body because I have decapitated you. And you can see what he does is he's drawing his right side forward and around, which is allowing her upper body to get over her feet correctly. So she can feel really stable and it's easy for her to connect into that closed position connection right away instead of having to adjust and compensate. There's a simple There's a really simple move I do, but I feel like every follow but you, Alicia, looks at me like I was a wizard when I lead it. And it's the basic. So it's where on count 5 of a whip, I lead us to both do a dramatic sidestep together in closed position, right?
Yep.
And all I do to do that is I let a follow be really stable on their 4 first. And then I'm like, okay, now we can take a sidestep together.
Yeah.
And that's a less complicated version of what we just looked at. But yeah, it's always so funny. They're all like, whoa.
That's funny.
It's the little things, leaders.
Uh-huh. Yeah. They're back to back. He's, in theory, kind of leading her, but he isn't doing so enough for her to just like follow.
Mm-hmm.
She's really having to pay attention so that she can kind of finish herself what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see right here, he does grab her hip and kind of move it, but where he initiates it and he kind of releases his hand, it doesn't actually rotate her. And he might have done that on purpose because he didn't want to toss her when he couldn't tell where she was at necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, she kind of has to finish it on her own. And so she kind of takes a step and is like, okay, I'm gonna finish this on one foot.
Yeah, I think if he had instead of swinging like a door to his left at the end to release that hip catch, if he had actually progressed in this direction to bring
Mm-hmm.
her hip in that direction, it might have felt a little bit more natural for her. It makes sense to err on the side of caution when your partner is behind your back,
Right.
when you don't have your eyes on them.
Yeah, especially because they're doing a really difficult like uh toss behind the back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something she does a really good job of paying attention to what he's wanting, because this is one of those things where like he is communicating it to her, but he can't quite fully lead her through. So
Right.
she
He
really
can't
has to
actually
be
move her through it just
right.
because
So
of
she really has to
his
be
own conditioning.
reactive in that situation. And she does a really good job of it.
Mhm. Can we do a whole like talking heads episode on why leaders don't move follows anymore?
That would
I
be interesting.
I want to talk about it because I feel like we're trying to arrive at some sort of global shared ESP.
Yeah,
And I'm like, we don't need to do that.
we don't
That's a
have
lot
to
of
read
work
each
for a
other's
sad
minds.
result.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, if we train follows to take care of themselves, they'll be able to shut down something that they either don't consent to just for like, I don't feel like it, or if they're
Right.
afraid they're gonna get hurt for any reason, like
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just like it's not like we're picking up a follow, moving them, setting them down. It's not a dictatorship, but like applying power to the system to where a follow doesn't have to generate 100% of the power themselves.
Yeah.
They can only generate a portion of it.
Hmm.
It makes life so much easier for both partners. Like I'm fully capable of dancing either role, following or leading a really light partner, but that
Hmm.
is always so much more work
It is.
than leading one that puts more weight into the connection. We're just being boogers with each other, and I love it. Don't try that at home with people you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
That's the only lesson there.
Yep. I want to talk about how she is safely getting through this. So once he hooks her, she's doing a few things in order for her to safely move through it. So one is that she's putting that, what's it, her left foot flat, like the top of the foot is flat on the floor. And then she is the right foot, she's not keeping her heel in contact with the floor. She's rotating it to the side so that it's not like in a position where it's kind of stuck there.
Mhm.
And so that's why both of her feet, they're in positions where she's not really stuck. If she were to have the toes on the ground with that left foot or the heel with the right foot, that can cause more of a problem if you're going to kind of swing through this. Just because it creates more pressure in one particular spot. So it's harder
Mhm.
to move away from that. And the other thing is with the like arm hold, starts with her hand up around the back of his shoulder.
You can just barely see her fingertips
Yeah.
right there.
Mm-hmm. And that's because the way that she's going down into this, she can't hold her weight quite as well as it. She can't hold her weight quite as well if she were to have her toes on the ground with that left foot. Uh,
Mhm.
and so she does need a little extra support as she's going down to kind of slow her momentum. But then once she gets to a position she's wanting to move out of, rotate out of, you can see she releases her hand from that shoulder and starts opening up. She's letting her whole like leg slide around on the floor. And so she's initiating it from her knee. So she's just kind of opening her knee up and then letting the right foot follow in a swing.
And then Jordan's paying attention to when he needs to get his left knee out of the way for her. I also want to talk about at the beginning, his line as he's supporting her is just delicious.
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, nice.
And you can see she ends up releasing her hand from his shoulder and lets it just kind of follow where she's going. She's not like intentionally moving it necessarily.
And
it ends up kind of on the inside, wrapped around his arm.
This is one of my favorite Colin responses.
I agree.
I'll touch your face. It's like, no, I'm going to touch your face. Why so serious? Ooh, 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 ooh. All right. This is the one-footed anchor. So Jordan steps forward, strikes on his right foot, rotates on it. And this is one where he's actually reeling taut out because that foot strike is actually happening on functionally the post count of this made up pattern that they're doing.
Right.
So that means taut does have more time in the context of an anchor to go away. But because of the way he's set up, there is no rope. So he does have to give her rope in this instance. So he reels it out. But as he is shifting his weight onto his right foot, he needs to stop reeling it out and then transition this rotational energy to grounded and pushing back away from her onto his left foot. So it's the magical one-footed post that becomes an anchor.
Yeah.
So he's taking rotational energy that is reeling taut out. And then the moment that he needs to stop reeling her out, he turns that rotational energy into linear energy and he grounds down into his right foot a little bit more and starts letting his weight move back over that right foot. So you can see how he's a little bit pitched forward here to begin with. So he's still reeling her out. But at this point, he doesn't want to reel her out anymore. So he starts sinking back and pushing off with his right foot. It is so sexy. Like, now that's a sign of a champion level leader in my mind, because being able to transition between those two things, that takes so much control. But obviously, taut is providing a consistent connection on the other side that is helping him have proprioceptive feedback to know when is the exact right moment to start transitioning between those two states. So it is a team effort, but it does require a lot of control in the leader to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's so silly. He's so aggressive with that thrust.
I know.
Again, don't try that at home, kids. The people you don't have consent to be that nasty with. Okay.
Love this from her.
Because he's totally ready to reconnect.
Yeah.
But she's all like, nah.
I'm going to have my moment. And I feel like this is something that we don't see a lot from her, where she's just like having a moment and just kind of hanging out there. And she just does a little hand styling and kind of moves her hair all with the music. Her face when she's like, I sense you getting closer.
What are you going to do, Jordan? And this is what I was referring to earlier. We get to see this one in particular.
Yeah.
So where she's doing kind of backwards neck roll under his arm. and you can see how he lifts his arm and raises his hand to his fingertips on her clavicle.
Yeah.
And he's going from upright to tipping.
Yeah.
Which is what's creating the illusion of her moving really fast past his arms, because they're both going like in opposite directions.
Yeah. This is also funny because I think they both lose their balance ever so slightly. And he resets and she resets, and they're both like body rolls.
I know. It's probably because they're, this is just me speculating for humor's sake. It's probably not true, but it's probably because they're used to doing that so fast. It throws their weight in a different direction. And they're like, oh, wait, what is this slowness?
I just think it's so funny because you can see like his foot kind of like comes up off the floor initially, and then hers, she kind of does too. And then they're both like, all right, let's reset. Now body roll.
Yep. Yep.
Because I think they get a little too close.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit weird angle.
Mm-hmm.
But they go right along with it. It's real good.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we're just seeing a normal sugar push from them.
I know. We're just seeing so many basics. Like, I don't know about anybody else out there, but sometimes when I'm wanting to learn from these pros and watch videos, the way Alicia and I are trying to teach you all to do, we do it for ourselves. But we're like, my kingdom for a boring anchor or a basic.
Yep.
But they never happen. And then when they do, I don't know. If somebody will get bored with the basics, I'm sad for you because they're juicy and they're nice. And
yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah, this is fun.
Such a power move for her to not rest her left leg anywhere on the floor. She's just like, I'm just gonna hover it. And not only once, but twice.
Uh-huh.
And she makes it look so easy. I was just like, if I were trying to hold my leg in that position, the cramp would happen so fast. Like, yeah, Jordan is counterbalancing her. So they're having the energy is going this way. But because the energy is in part going this way, this leg really wants to touch the ground in the physics of this situation. So it's not just her holding up her leg in without the context of this pattern, which would also be tough on the muscles, but she's actively countering.
Yes.
Centripetal force that's trying to be like, get to the ground, leg. And she's like, yeah, no big deal.
And it
so
creates
cool.
a really cool look.
I love it so much.
And they have that elbow to elbow connection for it. Or like elbow to mid arm.
Yeah.
This part is interesting. They have a little, not miscommunication, but I think they just get a little too close. So when he's kind of coming around her, I think because she's kind of leaning away and he's kind of coming towards her, they get just a little bit too close. And because there's the she's leaning away energy. Like it works out fine.
Yeah.
It's just a little choppier than it maybe should be.
Yeah, this is one of those where because of how they're connected, this side of her body would actually need to accelerate and go faster relative to how much this side is moving for her to stay centered.
Yeah.
But he's actually slowing that side down.
Yeah.
Which, because she's not leftward enough over that left foot, it's putting too much of her body weight free hanging out into nowhere without being counterbalanced. So her right side is seeking purchase.
Yeah.
And so she ends up just placing her foot down and aborting.
Yeah. And it works out fine. It
Oh
just
yeah.
a little choppier. You can tell it was very much a, ooh, got through
Yeah.
that.
That was one of those, like I was talking about earlier, with that first ride, we really went into, like, she was being really clear about where her center was and where she was going to go so he would know where to counterbalance her. And in this one, there are just, there are so many variables
Yeah.
because of how they're going into it.
Hmm.
Like, if they had had like one more count to establish where the center was of the whole situation, I think they would have been able to write it as long as they needed to, but
Yeah.
they didn't have it, and then they covered for it and exited it. That's always so hard to say. Exited it. Lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, that was such a fun dance.
It was. Well,
So I've been very bad about verbally saying we have t-shirts now, but we have t-shirts now. I will put the images on the screen and there is a link in the description box below. It is an Emperor's New Groove reference for the y'all nerds out there. Y'all should appreciate it because it's beautiful. So yeah, so if you don't want to do the Patreon shenanigans, you can buy a t-shirt. And the design is on the back. So you're not going to worry about anybody staring at your frontal area. But there are two options depending on if you want a darker t-shirt. There's a light text, so you can have a darker t-shirt, or you can have branded like red text with a lighter t-shirt. Anyways, I'm talking too much. We will be back at some undesignated time in the future.
yeah. Hopefully soon.
Yes.
We've had a lot going on recently.
Yeah. Spring has been bonkers. Hope y'all are getting by out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Bye.